Welcome to the Eberly College of Science Women's History Month panel discussion. For those in the audience, as you listen to today's panel discussion, please feel free to enter any questions you may have using the Q&A function. I'll address these at the end as we have time. This evening, we have a stellar group of panelists. All are Penn Staters, all are women, and all have something to say about how mentoring in STEM has impacted their own careers and how mentoring of and by women can make a positive difference to the careers of those in STEM. In 1970, women made up 8% of the STEM workers. By 2019, we made up 27% of all STEM workers. This is according to the US Census. However, we make up 50% of the population, so there is still progress to be made for us to achieve equal representation. Mentoring is one way that we can advance girls and women in STEM. And this evening, we have with us 4 outstanding women in STEM who have been successful in science and are here to share their experiences and insights with us. So I'll introduce them briefly and also ask each of them to tell us a bit about themselves and their career paths. But before we go any further, I wanted to let everyone know that this discussion is being recorded. Our first panelist is Barbara Dalton, Vice President of the Worldwide Business Development and Senior Managing Partner of Pfizer Ventures. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, thank you for the invitation to join everyone this afternoon.
This is great having you here. You are an Eberly College of Science alumna. Could you tell us briefly about your science background and what led you to follow your chosen career path?
Yes, first off, I would say that I'm an accidental tourist in the area of science, mainly because I'm dyslexic and I can't spell. And when you can't spell, you can never get good grades in English. And so I stayed away from anything that had to do with English and writing and naturally gravitated to the math and sciences. I entered Penn State as a math major. And when I had a brief discussion about what I could do with my math degree with a math professor, and he told me I could be an actuary in an insurance company, I decided that I was going to change to become a biology major. I ended up graduating Penn State with a degree in general science, covering primarily biology at that point. I came from a poor working class family and I needed to get a job. And thankfully, a professor at Penn State helped me get my first job as a lab technician in the city of Philadelphia in a virology lab. And that set my career on a path that I never could have anticipated as an undergraduate at Penn State, but I was thankful for what I received at Penn State in order to pursue 10 years of work in an academic lab, working in interferon, which has now become a $1 billion selling drug. Had no clue about it back those days, and ended up getting a PhD in the process of working there too. And when I left the academic lab, I moved into industry. Once again, probably not for all the reasons people choose to follow careers, but because I decided to stay with my husband, who was married to a family business in Philadelphia. And I could not go far away to do a postdoc or something like that. And we had a very large major pharmaceutical company here in Philadelphia, then called SmithKline. And I joined them and spent 10 years in their research labs. And then I left their research labs to the business side of science, the business of science, and joined their venture capital group. And for the past 25 years, I've been doing corporate venturing in the science, in the biotechnology space since then.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. I always love hearing these non-linear stories. I think there's often the perception that really successful women in science kind of had this linear path mapped out and stayed the course. And I love hearing about stories of people following different opportunities or being constrained by various real life situations. So thank you for sharing that. That was great. Our next panelist is Jane Charlton, Professor of Astronomy and Astrophysics at Penn State. Jane, welcome.
Thank you.
You are well recognized for your innovations in teaching astronomy while also pursuing your research career. Could you share a little bit about what prepared you for this and how you determined that this was the career path you wanted to follow?
Well, I always wanted to be an astronomer, and this was because I really wanted to contemplate how knowing more about the universe could help us to understand our own existence. that was always my ticket. And so I mean, I guess it's because I wanted to help people, and I thought that learning how amazing and vast the universe is might help people to feel better and appreciate life on Earth even more. Also, always wanted to write a video game when I was a kid, and let others experience learning without even really realizing that they were learning, and give them a chance to kind of not worry and contemplate and grow with a sense of wonder as they saw the material before them. And I also, you know, as I got older, I was in awe of my professors. I mean, they were rock stars to me, and I really aspired, you know, to that position. It wasn't easy. When I tell a high school student who wants to go into it, you know, what it's like, I say it's like wanting to be a professional baseball player. You know, there are a lot of things you have to do along the way, you know, to get to that point. And, you know, I guess another thing is that it's not easy because as you get further and further along, you don't get grades anymore. You don't get the straight A's. You don't get the pats on the back. You don't get the stickers on your paper. And you get fewer and fewer and fewer compliments and encouragement as you go further. It's just taken for granted, right? And so that, I guess, is the impediment along the career path that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, that as scientists, we often get constructive criticism, but it's often in the form of criticism and less acknowledgement of success and praise. And yeah, that I think is something we could think about as scientists, but definitely is an adjustment. Thank you, Jane. I would like to introduce our next panelist, Denise Okafor, Assistant Professor of Biochemistry and Molecular Biology and Chemistry at Penn State. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you.
Like Jane, you came to Penn State after doing research and teaching, and in your case at Emory, Morehouse and Spelman College. Could you tell us a bit about what inspired you to pursue this career path in science?
Yes, so after my PhD, I went into a postdoc position where I could my goal was to try and get some teaching experience, because you don't get a lot of teaching during your PhD, only in the form of TAing. And so I pursued this opportunity that was 75% research and 25% teaching, which the teaching happened at Morehouse and Spelman colleges, the HBCUs in Atlanta. And during the process, I was working on a research project that I really enjoyed, and I decided that I loved it and that I wanted to continue it in my own lab. And, you know, I was going to try and just work on it independently in my own, you know, with my own spin on it. And so I think that when I started a postdoc, I had thought that I would pursue a career that was more focused on teaching, maybe less research, but that changed during the postdoc because I found something that I really enjoyed doing and I could see myself doing for a long time. And so I decided to pursue a more research intensive career.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Denise. I think this is another story of being open to opportunities to take slight tangents in what you thought was a linear path. Thank you. All right, I now welcome Eberly Howeton to our panel. Eberly is a graduate student here in biology and is one of the college's prestigious Science Achievement Graduate Fellows. Eberly, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
Eberly, could you share what influenced your decision to pursue a PhD in biology, and leveraging your current perspective as a student, what types of mentoring you're seeking as you pursue your PhD and explore your future career options?
Yeah, so I think my path was also a little unconventional. So as an undergrad, I studied math and philosophy. And through those, my undergraduate years and then after graduation, I worked in a couple different business and industry settings on applied problems. So I was taking the math that I was using in the classroom and solving these complex real world problems. And I really loved that process. But for me, what was missing in those settings was the human component. I wanted to solve problems that mattered to people. And so when I had the opportunity to work with my advisor, Dr. Katrina Shea, on infectious disease and invasive species problems, it was really exciting, but it was in biology, which was a discipline that I didn't feel very familiar with. And so um, my advisor was able to sort of convince me and give me the confidence that the jump was not too big. And so I don't know that without her, I would be here today. So I need to thank her for that because I'm really glad that I am. And I think another thing that she has done for all of us is sort of created a lab space and a lab group where we all collaborate. And so in reflecting for this panel, I sort of realize the mentoring that I've got from postdocs and other grad students in the lab. And they've really helped me sort of grow and develop as a thinker and as a researcher.
Great, thank you, Emily. I think that's a beautiful example of how mentoring can inspire us to take exciting, I think, risks with our career paths and explore new avenues. Thank you. All right, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into mentoring, and specifically I would like to ask you, Barbara, for some perspective because you have had an incredibly successful career in industry, and so getting your experience on mentoring would be incredibly valuable. So Barbara, in your experience, what does mentoring look like in the corporate world, and what challenges do women in industry face that mentoring can help overcome?
I think that a good mentorship relationship is really having an advocate for you. Mentoring can sometimes take on an aura of, ooh, in terms of what impact you're having. But in the corporate world, having advocates, a major advocate, somebody who is going to stand up for you and put you forward when you're not in the room. That is what is critical, I think, in a corporate environment. We have, I work for Pfizer, as you heard, and little ad up there for Science Will Win, which became our motto at the beginning of COVID. And we think that science did win. But from that perspective, we have a mentorship programs because mentoring has become extremely popular in the last 10 years and everybody wants to do it. And it's prescribed to some extent. Every year I get mentees sent to me. But I'm not quite sure those sorts of programs work really well, as opposed to the people who get to know you well can then be your advocate inside an organization, as large, diverse, and sometimes quite impersonal as a company that employs, close to 100,000, or I guess we're much smaller than that now, maybe 70,000 employees. And so I sort of like it when somebody becomes your advocate in an environment. Now you have to prove yourself. You have to demonstrate skills and capabilities, and you have to be recognized. And you've all been in a meeting where there've been a group of people and somebody gets up to present or answers a question and you go, wow, that person was really good, but do you ever tell them? One thing, do you ever tell them that they were good? And secondly, do you then go play them, help them play it forward and say, that woman, Sarah over there, she has really been on top of this. You need to go talk to her. And that may be mentorship from afar, where you may not even know personally Sarah, but you've been in meetings with Sarah and you've been very impressed. And so it doesn't matter whether you're a guy or a girl, you should always be supportive of those who are excelling in what they do. And that's where I think, an active advocate for you, is extremely important. I think that as a student in academia, there was really no one there. I mean, we were assigned, Penn State's a large place. I was assigned an advisor who was a scientist, who felt if he had to do his career all over again, he'd be in real estate. So that's not exactly, incentive to drive you into a particular area, but, somebody who helps you get a job, somebody who, who says you can do this is extremely important. But I think more of advocacy for people who you see are excellent or very good at what they do is critical in an environment where you sometimes get lost in the crowd. And I'm sure that happens in academia too. But I think having people who are going to talk about you when you're not in the room, I think is really good. Positively. Positively.
Yeah, advocating when you're not in the room. That's really powerful. Thank you. All right, to explore mentoring in academia a little further, Barbara, you set this up really nicely. Thank you. Denise, are there aspects of a mentoring relationship that were important to you as a mentee and or that you feel especially strongly about as a mentor?
Yes. So I will say, just again, switching from this mentee to mentor perspective, I find that these things are different from when I was a trainee to now that I'm a PI. As a trainee, I think that I really like something that Emily said. She said that her advisor gave her confidence, or gives her confidence. I feel like that was a very important role for mentors in my own life, was telling me, oh, you can complete the PhD. Or when I was a postdoc and I was like, do you think I can pursue an R1 position? We're like, you can do this, right? If someone hadn't told me that I could do it, I might not have believed that I could do it. I don't know. And that was an important thing that they did, was telling me that I could do it, and then, helping me figure out the best way to pursue that. So just giving me confidence that I could do hard things and be successful. And then I would say that as a faculty member, especially a relatively new one, I think that's important for me in mentoring, is people that are proactive and are telling me, are anticipating what I need, because they have been themselves junior faculty and they're now more senior. And so they're reaching out to me and telling me, oh, this is something that I dealt with or I encountered when I was new, and so you should consider doing this, right? Just because that they know that these are things that they stumbled over. And so they're sharing the benefit of their own experience with me. I found that extremely valuable. I found that extremely helpful, especially at Penn State in my department. And I think that has been, I think that's key, actually, is mentors, for them to just as much as their experiences will allow, to anticipate what their mentees might need, and provide that for them. So that's I guess that's a kind of mentor I'm trying to be, is someone who is proactive, but also someone who gives confidence to the people that I am mentoring.
Great. Thank you, Denise. Jane, I'm going to flip the script a bit here. In a recent call by the College for stories about positive mentoring experiences, you were recognized by several people for your dedication as a mentor and for providing inspiration on how to be an impactful mentor. Can you shed some light on how someone becomes a good mentor? Is this an innate skill, or is it something that can be learned and developed over time?
I had a lot of practice learning to be a good mentor, because when I was going through school, I made a note when someone would hurt me, that I'm never going to do this thing. And that is a profound way to impress something upon yourself. I decided I would never say I was too busy. I might say I have a specific meeting. It's about this at this time, but I'll meet with you after it. I wouldn't just be vague and say, no, I don't have time. Also, very, very important for students to know that it is normal not to understand very much of anything in science for years and years and years, like a decade or more it takes to understand talks at conferences. And other students who are saying that they are understanding it in a different way than you are trying to. That's a polite way of putting it, right? And so it's important to be vulnerable and to share with them your own uncertainties. And that's even true about the research you're doing right at the moment with the student, that you're not just waiting for them to grasp it and catch up to you. You are together trying to do this research as a team. And that can be very, very exciting if you don't waste. I think I had to have wasted more than half of my time worrying that I wasn't good enough. And so that is, I mean, if not 3/4 or 90% of my time, I mean, it's ridiculous. And so I really try to send that message to students, and I think that that's important. In terms of strategically how to be a better mentor, of course you can learn that. That's the easy part. You can adapt and learn, but if you start with caring, compassion, and respect, then you're going to get it right, basically.
Thank you, Jane. That was great and really resonated with me as well. Thanks. All right, Emily, how did you go about finding mentors and what qualities are important to you in a mentor?
So I think for me, the process of finding mentors is sort of like keeping as many doors open as possible. And so just exploring relationships that emerge sort of organically and seeing where they go. And which leads to the second part of the question, which one of the things that I value most in a mentor is being sort of comfortable with that person. And so, for example, am I comfortable enough to share my ideas, knowing that it might be a good idea, but it also might be a really bad idea? And so being comfortable enough with that person that it's okay to share the bad ideas in addition to the good ones. And I think also one of the things that my advisor has helped me do, and I'm not sure I could have done it as well on my own, is sort of build a network of people that I can go to, and building a network of people that have a lot of different skill sets and then bring a lot of different perspectives to the table. So when I have a question or a problem to sort through, I can think about the most appropriate person to help me with that particular problem.
And then as a follow-up question for you, Emily, looking back just over a year into this pandemic, what has mentoring meant to you during this time, and has it been different?
I think one of the most valuable things that I've gotten from my mentors during the pandemic, and I think I would have gotten it otherwise, but it was especially important now, is just prioritizing. Not only prioritizing my research, but helping me prioritize my health, my physical and mental health, and my personal life. So I think we've all struggled with separating those things. And so just having someone to remind me that I'm important as a person, as aside from my science, has been helped me get through the time, I think.
Great. Thank you, Emily. All right, this is going to be some questions that are open for anyone that wants to provide some input or their thoughts. In some fields and workplaces, women make up a small percentage of the workforce or operate within a male-dominated organizational structure, processes, and practices. Could you share any experiences or advice that you have around creating a sense of community and belonging for women, such as developing professional support networks, which Emily, I know you kind of mentioned, and the role of mentors in achieving this? Anyone can jump in. Yeah.
By virtue of being in science, aren't we almost always a minority in the things that we do, whether it's our job and in going to school or in academia? Just because, as you started off the talk about, the numbers of women in STEM is lower. There's obviously a lot more women in the wet sciences than there are in, astronomy, for example, or even, and chemistry has really made great strides in the past for 20 years, I would say, as far as women are concerned. But we almost always find ourselves in environments where we are the minority. In terms of where we're in a position to create an environment that is safe for everyone, men and women, to be able to be free to speak their mind and to feel like they're a valued member of a group or a team. I think women are very good at putting together teams and making teams work well together. We have a lot, I think our male counterparts in general may have a lot more experience with sports teams. That's a little bit too competitive. It's not the kind of team I think you need to really be successful. We've also heard in academia of highly competitive laboratories where postdocs are pitted against postdocs. I would never, ever set up an environment like that. To me, that is the antithesis of the way I, as an individual, and I think to somewhat it reflects me as a woman, would work. But I think creating the environment and the team environment will help. I work in a team of, I think we have 2 women and 8 men, and several of the men have said to me, I have never been a member of such a great group in terms of what we get done, how we do it, how we work together, than this team. And you know, I said, well, what's different about it? And he said, it's just the way you do things, you know. And to some extent, to me, that's just the way I do things. It's very hard sometimes to parse what's different about the way I operate versus the way, say, a male counterpart would operate as head of a team. But I do think it is less competitive, more collaborative in general from a female perspective. That said, we heard the comment about creating a, you know, an environment where we can work, you know, or feeling that we're not good enough or that we need the reassurances and confidence. I think we have to start that with girls before they ever get to school, when they're very young, you know, to give them the confidence that you can do anything you want to do. You can achieve anything you need to. And yes, you are smart. And keep telling them that even before they get to school. You know, I think that'll help build the confidence of women in general, because I think we all fall in the same category there.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll add a few words. So again, for me, part of my mentoring has been, again, people telling me, being proactive and giving me advice, and me deciding that sounds really good, I'll take that, or maybe not, maybe I won't take that. But something that my department head shared with me when I first started really early on was how she had a group of women colleagues that she, you know, as a group, and that they had been a very strong support for her, though most of the time she'd been at Penn State. And I decided really quickly that that sounded amazing and that I wanted that for myself. And since then, I've since been able to set up a similar, with help from other faculty, of course, I'm not taking all the credit, with a similar group of a network of women, young female faculty at Penn State, where we are all providing support for each other as we navigate, you know, running labs, or we haven't recently started labs, especially in time of COVID. And so I think that addresses both points of the question, is creating this network. I think that for me, I just reached out and surprised by how many people were looking for the same thing. But also, again, it was an idea that I would not probably have had on my own if it hadn't been, you know, shared with me by a senior colleague in my department.
I think that I'm probably the oldest member of this group, and I will tell you that I never had a female mentor or advocate. All of my mentors and advocates were men. And maybe it's because I started so long ago. But it's highly you know, it was just, there weren't women there to be mentors and advocates for you.
Yeah, I'm the same is the case for me. I mean, the point is finding any mentor or advocate at all, no matter, you know, what gender, that was what was important, right? It didn't matter to me, you know, who it was. And it just, you know, it's hard enough to find anyone without being particular, right? To appreciate you, and reaching out to all students the same, I think is very important. Everyone needs it, not just women, right?
I think that, you know, the stats for science are very poor, in that 50% of the students who enter with the anticipation of pursuing a scientific degree as freshmen are gone by the time they get to their second year. And I think that's where real mentorship and help could help, you know, bolster not only the scientific knowledge level of the world, but also bring more women and minorities into more actively being involved in science. And I think that there is a lot of help which is needed, you know, at the early stages of a scientific career. Some of it's purely technical, you know, learning, you know, but a lot of it is confidence building. It is, you can do this, and you fail something, that's not the end of the world. Guess what? Most of the experiments we do fail. That's why we call it research. You know, we go back and we do it again and again and again, you know. So I think having younger people understand that just because your experiment failed, you're not a failure, you know. Failed experiments actually tell you something. You learn something, you know, from failed experiments too. So I think that we have to start building those, not only building those confidences, but providing support systems around younger people as they come in as freshmen, or even in high school, or even, it's got to start earlier, because we lose them. To our networks, to be able to build more networks of, of women going forward, because we lost them, in the process of educating them.
Right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit, but we'll come back to general comments if anyone else has anything to add on this topic. We know that there are different styles of mentoring and that these have advantages and limitations in different situations. I'd like to explore your individual approach to mentoring, and do you change your mentoring style based on who you are mentoring or the context?
Well, maybe I can start off with this one. I mean, I think that my approach is really governed by the idea that I want to help them to learn to be better researchers efficiently. And I don't expect them to do that on their own. I don't take a draft that they write and then mark it with a bunch of red ink that says, this is unclear, correct this. And, rather, perhaps the first time I'll make the revisions, or perhaps we'll sit together and make the revisions so that they could then look back at that. And then the next time they maybe could do it better on their own. Because I feel that a lot of time is wasted just sitting and thinking, I don't know what they meant that I should do differently than this. And so that is, I think, something that I believe. But in terms of, who is the student? Is it a student who wants to devote their life to research in astronomy? Or is it a student who wants to be a wonderful, inspirational teacher at a community college? Or is it a student, who wants to go work on Wall Street after this? All of them are deserving, but they may want different things from me and different amounts of time, different types of things, different levels of hands-on or hands-off. And so that's something that one has to read in order to figure out how best to help them. But always telling them that they can do it.
I mentioned that Pfizer had a program where I used to get assigned people to mentor. And I don't know how they chose their assignments, because many times they were not aligned. And for example, one of my usual questions is, what do you want to get out of this? What do you want to achieve? What can I help you with? And there was a time when I had a person who was a sales representative in a foreign country. A country that I did not know much about, hadn't lived in, didn't understand the healthcare system in, and I've never sold anything other than science. And so it was like, I don't think I can help you here, but we need to go find you someone who can, because I think, understanding, your own limitations in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. And the funny thing is that person has kept in contact with me for years. Oh, this was great. I've become a friend as opposed to a sort of mentor-mentee relationship. But I think it's also judging, whether you can help this person. The younger you are in your career, I don't even think a lot of people know what to ask for or what they need. And so where I'm talking about is in the corporate environment where people are many years into their career. But I think at a student level or a young scientist level, they just don't know. And it's like we all look back at our careers and say, oh my God, what I didn't know back then. And I think it's helping people understand what the future can hold for them, what they're going to need to know, et cetera, is very different when you're mentoring someone at the beginning stages as opposed to later in their careers.
right, another common question for anybody, and Emily and Denise, this might be a particularly interesting one to hear your perspective on. So recalling a time when you faced a major challenge or obstacle in your career, what did a mentor do to help you through it? Or what do you wish that a mentor could have done to help you through it?
Yeah, I can take this one first. So in graduate school, I'll just jump into the challenge right away. The exam that you take to become a PhD candidate, your candidacy exam. So I was ready and I took this exam and I did not pass it the first time that I took it. I took it again. I did not pass it a second time that I took it. And then it became a question of what are we going to do with Denise, right? And then I think that for me, that was a pivotal point in my career. And I would say that mentors for me made all the difference in that situation, because I had people on my committee who said, you should go and do something else. You should find a different profession, or, and which I might have done something else and been happy, sure. But then I had people who stepped up and said, you can do this and we will help you do it. Like you're capable and you're able to be successful and you can do it. And there are a couple of people like that. And they served as mentors to me in that situation. And I think that those attitudes were literally the difference between me being here and me being somewhere else, because that was I could not have made it out of that situation without mentors that were willing to shepherd me and lead me along the right path. So I would say that that was a situation for me where I understood that mentors, how important mentors are, and this idea that they can inspire confidence in you, and they can see your potential, right? Especially when you can't see it, people don't know what they're capable of, and as mentors, it's like, hopefully it's their job or my job or our job to yes, to see these things in people that they can't see. And yeah, I think that was a situation for me where mentoring made a big difference in just the trajectory, I would say, of my life.
Great. Thanks, Denise.
I think, yeah, building off what Denise said, for me, beyond just confidence and is perspective. So as a PhD student, my perspective is limited. I mean, I'm very new to all of this. And so I find that my mentors, my advisor in particular, has a way of sort of saying, this is normal, this feeling is normal, this situation, it happens, it's okay, you can get through it, and here's how we're going to do that. And so being available and checking in, but then also providing that sort of calm, steady perspective is really invaluable to me.
Great, thanks, Emily.
I have a story where my scientific mentor, right after in the 10 years after I graduated from Penn State, who became my thesis advisor and things like that, died within 2 months suddenly, and I was not finished my career, my degree, and it was a tremendous shock for me. But the next mentor I got was another member of the faculty who sort of picked me up off the floor and told me I knew more about what I was doing than anyone in the world. I was extremely smart, and I'm going to help you get through this, and you are going to be ultimately phenomenally successful. And believe me, I can't help you. I can't teach you anything, because as a PhD student, you're the one who should know the most about your project, right? But giving you that confidence that, think about it, you know more about your scientific research than anyone in the world, and giving you that confidence, to say, we're going to do this, we're going to finish this, and, a year and a half, 2 years later, we got finished. Let's put it that way, with the help of the person who, sort of picked me up as a follow-on student, which I will internally be grateful for both of them.
So for me, as a graduate student, my advisors gave me sort of surface level, advice about the research itself, and it wasn't delving deep enough to be everything that I needed to grow as a scientist. And in my first doctoral position, I was really looking for that. I felt like I need to be more than what I am. And so I found that. My advisor was actually had just retired recently. He was an older man, and he spent at least several hours a week with me, wrote skeleton outlines of paper discussions for me to fill in, and he would always make time to talk. Often that meant walking him home. And he'd take the time along the walk, to talk to me, and it was wonderful. Um, Went for the second postdoc, and the circumstances of my mentor changed, his personal circumstances, and so he wasn't really available in a very large way. And so I was floundering. And this story isn't going the way that you think that it's going to go. I went to visit my first mentor, my true mentor, and he said, well, I'm concerned. I don't think you're doing very well. And I don't really think you're going to make it as a researcher in astronomy. So, yeah. So what do you do, right, when the one person that believed in you changes their mind? So that's something not to do as a mentor, just a pointer. I choked back the tears, of course, right? Managed to get out of the house without breaking down, but I went back the next day and I said, no, you're wrong. And this is why you're wrong. These are the circumstances that caused this stuff you're concerned. And I kind of swayed him a little bit, and I guess that made me feel better enough that somehow I managed to persevere. But how unnecessary was that? Like, what purpose did that possibly serve, right? So that's sort of what not to do, right? Both what to do and what not to do, I guess.
Thanks, Jane. It's not great thinking about all the what not to do's, but I think you're right. It is just as important to learn from people how we can be good mentors and to note the things that really can make a big difference if we just avoid them. All right, we're going to shift to question answer time. We have some questions in the chat. If anyone else has any questions or topics for discussion, please go ahead and put them in. The first is kind of builds off your comments, Barbara, about encouraging women and girls even before school starts, and agreeing how important that is. But then the question writer also said that some women make it through undergrad, master's, PhD, and even postdocs in STEM, but find themselves in contexts or situations that challenge confidence. And so the question really is about, how do you as mentors or as scientists find a barometer of confidence for yourselves or your team, and what actions do you take when it gets too low?
Do we all suffer from the imposter syndrome here? And is that unique to women, or does everybody feel that way? I think when you do, check with somebody else, check in with somebody else. Use somebody else as a sounding board, or you'll sort of drive yourself crazy in your own head. I think having somebody to bounce something like that off of when you are losing confidence for whatever reason, I would say check in with somebody else, a friend, somebody who understands the situation you're in. I think that maybe they would become a mentor at that point in time, but I do think it's a matter of getting affirmation for the path that you have chosen to take, and that you're on the right path, and that, you should, help to bolster that confidence.
Jane, do you, given your expertise, experience, wisdom in what to do and what not to do as a mentor, do you have a mechanism by which you check in with mentees about their confidence levels and a way to address it?
I was trying to figure this out, and the best that I can think of is I think that I intermix it with each and every discussion I have with them. And I think that I tend to do it by example, to some degree, talking about my own uncertainties and things, and that invites them to share
Yeah.
their uncertainties. And it's kind of a natural thing and not something where I can say, okay, today is when I'm going to check in and see, about the confidence. So I mean, I hope that I'm doing it all the time.
So this ties into your previous comment about vulnerability and kind of demonstrating that there is so much, and Barbara's point as well, demonstrating that there is so much uncertainty in science, and it's okay, and inviting those discussions.
Yeah. So I mean, for example, after a colloquium,
Mm-hmm.
Saying I didn't really follow that to the person. And then they're going to say, oh, I didn't either. I thought I was the only one. I mean, it's just something as simple as that. And it's just the truth. It's like, well, let's talk about this part together because I think this might be important for our research. And we'll see if we can read about it and figure it out, better. So
That's a great point. I can't say how many, it still happens to me, but now I'm comfortable with it. But as a student, how many talks I came away from being like, I can't believe I didn't understand that. And if I had someone else say I didn't either, that would have made me feel so much better. All right, another question. Do you feel that it is useful to explicitly discuss career options or potential career paths with students early on? And did you have somebody who did this explicitly with you, or do you wish that they did?
I feel very strongly about this. I think it is the responsibility of academia to prepare students for a variety of career options and not just academia, because if you think about it, most of the students in science are not going to become academics. And I think in general, all universities do a very poor job at exposing students, particularly in the sciences, to what they can do with their science education. And to be quite truthful, your faculty doesn't know it either. I think that's a problem in that they know very well their academic environment, et cetera, but exposing students to what their options are as science majors is lost as part of the education process. And I think we do them a great disservice, to be quite truthful. I think and I think even if you're an English major, these people have to go out into the world and survive and make a living. And if we're not helping them understand how they can take what they've learned at Penn State into something that can provide them with support and a life going forward, we're not meeting our academic challenge.
And I think we need to send a better message that that is our goal. I have had some students who have been tentative about sharing that their career goal is not academic because they've been concerned that I will give them the mentorship that they need, or if I will be less enthusiastic about mentoring them because they're not going into academia. And that's awful. Like we need to be supportive, and we need to encourage our students and ask our students in a way that they're not afraid to tell us what they really need mentoring on.
So I'm going to make a pitch here, which is I've made for years at Penn State in the College of Sciences, that every single science class that is taught should have one lecture devoted to a graduate of Penn State who majored as an undergraduate or a graduate in that area of science, if it's chemistry or astronomy, whatever, and talk about their career. Because they won't all be astronomers and they won't all be chemists, but they will be a variety of things. So think about it. By the time you finished 4 years as an undergraduate as a science major, you will have been exposed to at least 20 different careers that are not purely academic science careers.
Yeah. And coming back to the
one lecture in every science class, one lecture.
And coming back to the non-linear career paths, I feel like if you, for example, stood in front of a class and told your story and said, I mean, I was in this class and I had no idea what I was going to do, or I thought I was going to do X and ended up here. I feel like coming back to the confidence building and the reassuring, that will help students so much that are feeling like they should know what they're going to do.
Can I
challenge, Tracy? I'll give you the challenge. Do that.
So I think it is important. I think that, yes, it is important to have this discussion with the trainees and about different careers. A different perspective, I think, and this is the kind of an onus on the mentors, is just from personal experience, I feel, I can't prove this 100%, but I feel very strongly that I was mentored a little differently than people that graduated at the same time as me, because I told my advisor that I wanted to pursue a position at a primarily undergraduate institution. And I see in retrospect, I see that there was a difference in kind of the rigor or the expectations that were set as far as papers that I published, or just kind of the science, or just things that I achieved in grad school. And of course that changed, right? This other person is in industry and I'm at an R1 school. And so I don't know. There's a thing where, you know, like I think we know what we want to do when we start grad school, but I think it's important for mentors to, and this is again as advisors, not just as advisors training people, to train everyone the same way rigorously. I think that's important.
This is a question that I think resonates particularly during COVID, where many of us are facing a multitude of challenges, some of which are experienced more strongly by women who have caregiver responsibilities and other things that take additional time up. So this question is really about how you manage your time. So I really like Jane's comment about not saying you're too busy, but how do you handle mentoring requests or people reaching out for advice and support when you're already feeling overwhelmed and there are so many people that need help?
I once made the comment in a public forum that I was going to reduce the amount of time I was giving to people outside in terms of advice, counsel, etc. And all I meant was, don't schedule an hour with me, schedule a half hour. But they all said, oh my God, we can't talk to her anymore, you know? So I was just trying to say, not that I wanted to see more people, I needed some more time. I'd be glad to talk, but we can only do this for a half hour. We can't, you know, so if you want to talk to me, don't schedule an hour, schedule a half hour. But it was taken the wrong way. So be careful when you're trying to balance your time. I work in an area where you have to give of your time outside of your day job, so to speak. I don't know any science job, which is sort of 9 to 5, but you have to be out in the external community. And I really had to place boundaries when I was, you know, coming up in my career, particularly when I was raising a family and things like that, to say, okay, I will be out 2 nights a week. I need to look at a week ahead and say, I can only do 2 nights a week out. The rest of the nights I need for myself and for my family, etc. So sometimes you just really have to set discrete limits. It's obviously very hard during a pandemic, etc. too. But I think it's great that Emily said what she said about her advisors and people being concerned about our health and welfare and something. And it's amazing how much we all talk to each other. You know, you're getting your exercise, or you're eating right, or you know, how do you feel? You know, you're sleeping, you know, we never had those conversations before. So maybe now we'll take better care of each other, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, this one is a big question and we don't have that much time to answer it. So if anyone has some seeds of an idea, but this might be a great topic for a future panel discussion. This is again thinking about well, I guess I'll kind of merge two questions because we're running out of time. One was thinking about the importance of mentoring and what the ratio of students of color seeking mentorship are. And then related to that is it is important, and we often discuss building confidence, but often this is an environment that isn't necessarily supportive or conducive. So how you can have all the confidence in the world, but if you have a hostile work environment, then that isn't conducive to success. So if we have any advice for mentors, administrators, on how to foster safe environments to keep women in science.
Cultivate a community of women and you can peer mentor each other. I think it works. I don't know if there's evidence. I'm sure that there is, but I can't say 100%. But especially as women, there's just everybody's going through something different, and collectively, you can. There's just great benefit and a great wealth of, a great wealth that comes from building that kind of community.
I think this comes back to a lot of the kind of other themes about kind of normalizing and building confidence and verifying. I too have found Wendy Hannah Rose, who is also your department head, Denise, helped establish a women's leadership program that's growing through Penn State, and that has a kind of peer mentoring piece to it. And for me, it was just so valuable being able to connect with women across Penn State, just to be able to say, this thing's happening and I don't know how to deal with it, and get advice, or more often have people say, that's not actually your fault and there is nothing that you can, like, this is not your responsibility to fix, but here are some ways that you can address it and handle it. And that is just so empowering, having other people say, no, it's not you. It happens to all of us. Here's some ways that we can work together to handle it. Jane?
Yeah, I just thought of something that would fit in well with this question. It's if you if you have a colleague, like a collaborator, that sends an email to your student, or perhaps someone who asks a question at a colloquium of your student and is not polite, call them out on it immediately and publicly, but not, oh, you shouldn't have said that, but rather, in a discreet way, say, I mean, it depends how severe the infraction is, but don't wait. Do it, and do it with a copy to the student, and say, look, this is not acceptable behavior, because these things wouldn't be happening to begin with if we were all just nice.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think that's great. We did, Penn State has an ouch training, and I love that because I often don't know the words to say on the spot, and then it's too late. And so just saying something as simple as, oh, ouch, kind of draws attention to the fact that, like, maybe that wasn't the best thing to say without having to really elaborate, and then you can talk about it later. All right, we are nearly out of time. So I wanted to give my sincerest thanks to each of our panelists for spending time with us this evening and sharing their experiences and insights on mentoring with us. Barbara, Jane, Emily, and Denise, it has been incredibly valuable having you participate in this celebration of mentoring of and by women in STEM. And to our audience, thank you for being here tonight and for your excellent questions and for your ongoing support of women in STEM. I look forward to future discussions on these and other topics. Thank you so much and have a great night.